Hello friends, welcome to Tech by Gaurav K. We are here to discuss about DevOps. As the name suggests, it has something to do with development and operations. But it seems like, at least when I started working in DevOps, I didn't completely understand what it means. So to me, it was a little kind of a mystery. So I'm preparing this video for those who have a similar kind of a situation where they feel like what this infers to and what this actually means. So in today's video, we'll discuss about how to actually understand this term. As you see that I have tried to like separate these two words to begin with. There is a logic behind it because if we try to like deep dive into the individual terms here and try to like understand what dev actually means. So dev, as we know, it is development. And on a similar note, ops is operations. So development and operations have been in existence for quite a long time. And if we say what is the relationship between the two, means how are they related? I think a simple way to say it would be development delivers the code in the form of an artifact, and operations uses this artifact to do a lot of things, in a way run the application, right? Run the app. So there are a lot of things that the development team does, which we don't realize. Means means we realize, but what I'm trying to say is that we are trying to like bundle it all together. So development here has a lot of things inside it, and so does operations. But in, I would say, the world without DevOps, the operations team have no clue about, or rather, they don't bother about what's going on in the development arena. And likewise, the development team doesn't, rather, is not interested in understanding what is happening in the operations arena. So there is no back and forth sync between the two. They are living in their own arena, and operations is living in their own arena. When we say DevOps, it's like the mixture of the two. And why are we adding these two together? Or how does it help the organization if these two come together in a more agile way? So the thing is, in the past, it was really hard to bring these two components together because operations was mostly in the physical, or I would say virtual, private infrastructure, and development was all about code. So there was no real connectivity between the two. So what changed this status quo was is actually the advent of cloud, which is public cloud, and the tools that have come up along with the cloud. So these two things in combination have transformed the industry in a major way, and they are the reason why we see the buzzword dev and ops being so frequently used in the industry. So how did cloud and tools, I mean, we'll go into a few of the tools, but tools is in general. So how did this actually bring up the DevOps philosophy? So the main reason, like one of the few of the top reasons, is like the time. And I'm focusing more towards the operations here right now. So the time for provisioning the infra, right? In in the old without public cloud scenario, it could take anywhere from few weeks to maybe few months. With cloud, this moves significantly down to few hours, to even in some cases few minutes. So this made operations so much efficient. With the provisioning infra timing going down into hours and minutes. Second thing which operations had been struggling with was the the kind of manual work that they used to do in terms of provisioning infra. So the time that they used to invest in provisioning infra and the manual efforts that they used to do was a lot. So with cloud, what happened is all the providers have their APIs, cloud APIs. When I say providers, I mean Azure providers like Azure, AWS, Amazon, or GCP, Google, or others, any of these providers. So they provide their APIs. With these APIs, what operations team can do now is they don't need to do it manually. They can actually code their infrastructure, which we call as infrastructure as code. So in a way, they can just be like developers in terms of infrastructure provisioning. So they are getting the APIs or the platform from the cloud providers to just code everything and create it whenever they want to. So that is a big shift for the operations team. Third key thing, which is again from the cloud itself, are the cloud inherent features. So when we say cloud inherent features, there are so many of them. I will just mention two of those which are quite critical and valuable for the operations team in general. So scalability and availability. So these two, which used to be like a mammoth task for the operations team, got reduced to mere configuration items in a cloud world. So they are just like you can decide or even automatically configure these settings and just have a highly scalable and highly available infra available to you. So these 3 points together, which are from the cloud world, made the operations team more of a development, infra development team, right? So they operations in its new avatar can now be referred to as infra devs, developers. Now, how did the tooling part help the whole process? So when we go a little deep into this, so tooling not just help the operations, but the development as well. So tooling, it actually introduced in a way something called CI/CD. We will discuss more about these in the upcoming videos. But CI/CD, when I say CI/CD, I mean continuous integration, integration, and CD is continuous deployment or delivery in some cases. there is subtle difference between the two. We will to that, come back to that later. So tooling gave you the capability of CI/CD along with managing the code like SCM, managing your tasks like doing the usual planning stuff. So managing tasks and so many other things. I mean, these are just examples. I'm just giving you a highlight of what tooling can do. So all this did, the tools part, they actually made the development team come closer to the operations team. So with continuous integration, continuous deployment, delivery, now development became more familiar with the operations part of it. Okay. And with the cloud, the the operations became more familiar with the development, means not essentially application development, but infra development. So in a way, you can see that both development, both development and operations started coming together. And with the tooling in cloud, it became more feasible for them to work together in an effective manner. So, means in the current scenario, many developers are moving towards operations, and many operations team members are moving towards development. So it's kind of the boundary is getting getting crossed over, and they are much closer, and that's how we come to this term, which is DevOps. So it's good to know what triggered DevOps, and so cloud and tooling triggered DevOps initiation, and it became a reality in the current scenario. It has been a reality for the past few years. So this is how I understand it, and hopefully you also got a better understanding of this now. Let me know in the comments if you feel like this helped you or not. And this is what it is. But when I say it like this, it looks like cloud and tools is DevOps, but that's not what it is. DevOps in itself is uh, is a concept, is a philosophy. Let me put it in bold so that it's clear. It is a philosophy. You can say it's a cultural concept. It is it is a set of processes, and you can also say that it is a flow of flow of application development in an org. So how does the application development flows in an org? So for that we can define the go into the details of what DevOps lifecycle is. So what is the DevOps lifecycle? So there are to be true there are 8 phases. And we start with the most important one, which is the plan phase. In this, the phase is mostly governed by the business team. They, based on their priority, they come up with the features that they want to be delivered in the application. Here, many tools are used like Jira, ADO, Azure DevOps, and other tools are used where you manage your task, your backlog items, your entire list of requirements or features that you want to be made available in your application. And you plan sprints, which are part of the agile framework, like you plan your sprints and you run with those tasks in that sprint and you deliver those features. Means that's a separate discussion. We'll come back to that in a different video. So these features are being pushed by the business stakeholders, and it goes into the next phase of its life cycle, where it's actually being coded by developers. So they take these features from the business stakeholders and they start writing code. It can be C sharp, it can be Java, it can be Python, or anything that the organization or the development team finds comfortable or as per the requirement, means based on their decision. So any of these frameworks or languages can be used. And what they actually do is write code. And that's where the SCM tooling comes into picture, like Git or SVN or TFS. So Git is the most common one. If you're working in the engineering domain, you're most probably familiar with what Git is. And Git is the go-to SCM, source code management tool, that the developers and the operations team use. So with Git, you get your local copy of the code and you push it to a central repository, which can be something like ADO, Azure DevOps, or GitHub, or Bitbucket, or GitLab. There's so many. It's just an example. And you push your code to one of these central repositories. And it where as soon as that happens, the next stage phase starts, which is the build stage. You check the code into your central repository, and there is a process for triggering the build. So that is known as continuous integration. That's where I referred to that earlier. So continuous integration, CI, is actually taking the code that is being checked into the central repo, and it's kind of making sure that that code is good enough to be built even before it is merged into the master or the main branch. So that code is being built using CI, and further means here we use different types of tools like Maven, Gradle, or or MS Build. I mean, these are just examples. Depending on the framework you're working on, you will use different tools. So you build your code and you automatically get the code in the CI process. And post that, once that code is built, it is good enough to be built, then it is tested. So the code validation happens. So the testing happens as well. So you see, this is a kind of a very automated kind of flow here. So requirements are being gathered from the business, and then it's pushed to the developers. They write the code, push their code to the central repository. It gets integrated into the continuous integration part. It's being tested that it is being built, it can be built, and then it is being tested for other validations. Once this is done, this is the core dev cycle, you can say. After that, the artifacts are being released over to the operations team. So there comes the next phase, which is the release phase, in which the artifacts which are built and tested here, they are pushed to the release, and it lies with the operations team. Now the operations have their task. They need to make sure that they deploy this release as per the business requirement, either automatically or uh, when I say automatically, I mean with without any approval or with some approvals. Means I mentioned about continuous deployment and delivery. So deployment is like there is no approval required. As soon as you have a working release, working artifact that is ready for production, you just deploy it, like in this case. But in case of delivery, in certain companies where you cannot just push any new release whenever it's ready, you have to put some approvals in or checks in order to ensure that even if you have a ready build, ready artifact to be pushed to be available is available to be pushed to the production environment, even then you need an approval. So that is the subtle difference between deployment and delivery, continuous deployment and continuous delivery. So this release phase, release, the artifact is being deployed on top of the infra. So the infra is pre-provisioned, right? Means you have your different environments like dev, test, UAT, pre-production, and production. And they can be other environments as well, or maybe they can be less environments as well. It's all up to the organization or the team. That's their choice. Normally, they have at least dev, pre-prod, and production in normal cases, but it's completely something which is specific to the team. So what happens is all the infra is already provisioned by the operations team. How? So that's what we discussed before. Now operations is pretty much like the development. So using the cloud and the tools, they're able to provision infra using the cloud APIs, and it's like everything is as code, infra as code. So it's pretty straightforward. They have their pipelines and they provision the code, provision the infra. That makes it very easy for the development team, operations team rather. So this is where they have provisioned all these infrastructure for different environments, and as soon as they have the artifact, they push it to the environment one by one to dev and then to test and to UAT and to pre-prod and to prod. In the continuous deployment model, it will simply flow without any restriction. In the continuous delivery model, it will have its own approval stages. So at every step you will have an approval to be pushed. So that's a subtle difference here. And once it is deployed, now comes the main core operations activities. So this is where the core day-to-day operations will come into picture. This is where the operate phase comes. So this will be this is an ongoing process, operations and maintenance. And after that, you come into the picture with monitoring, because this is a continuous feedback loop. It's not one way. So if you see, if I try to minimize this, now this is ops. So this is a complete cycle. Means again, this monitoring will give you updates, then it will move to the plant phase again, depending on the monitoring data that you get. So although plant will push new features, but the features which have already been pushed will be getting a feedback via monitoring, and that can part of the plant phase again. So we use different tools in this entire process. Means I missed on mentioning that here. Like you can use Selenium, you can use JUnit. In the release, you can use like there are many tools like Jenkins, and we've already mentioned about ADO. So you can use Jenkins, and for deployment, you can use different clouds like Azure, which we already mentioned, AWS or GCP. And for operational activities, like you can deploy on top of containers, and you can manage the operations there, like Kubernetes, Docker, and You can also use virtual machines, or you can use platform as a service, PaaS, different offerings from the cloud providers, and operate on top of that. And for monitoring, you can use, like in Microsoft Azure, you can use Log Analytics or Google Analytics in Google. And if you are working on containers, you can use Prometheus, Istio, and other monitoring tools like Grafana. So there are a whole host of things that are there in the market, in the industry, that you can use. So with the advent of cloud and the tools, right? Because these tools you see everywhere in the process, means from the very beginning, you see Jira, ADO, you see Git, SVN, GitHub, ADO, and here also you see means Jenkins is also a part here in the CI process also. So this entire process, you see, there are so many tools. Means I'm not mentioning many of them. Maybe I'll put it across in a different video. But you see, there are so many tools involved here, and cloud is the main driver here. So cloud is making the entire deployment journey so fast and so smooth. And it is also assisting in the monitoring phase, the operations phase, and it is picking the release from the development. So in a way, this is what DevOps cycle, life cycle is in a very simple layman terms. So I hope this made some sense to you, and it gave you some better understanding of what DevOps is. I'll be working more on bringing more videos related to this topic and making sure that you get better understanding in due course of time. This is a very initial video on the topic, and we plan to bring many more videos like this. So I hope you liked it. If you like the video, please do like the video, and if you want to get such videos in the future, just hit subscribe and push the alert button so that you get all the notifications. Yeah, and let me know in the comment section if you want to, how did you like the video, and if you have any comments to share, or if any suggestions for the future videos. So that's it, friends, and we'll wind up the video here itself. Thanks a lot and have a good day.